We're helping you get ready for the 2024 fantasy football season by uncovering some hidden gems. Last year, we identified James Cook way before anybody else was talking about him. He wound up 4th in the league in rushing. Who's going to be this year's hidden gem that you want to take?
Yeah, I think one of the guys I'm definitely going to be drafting a ton of this year is Kendre Miller. I talked him up last offseason. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out for Kendre Miller. Not because he was bad, not because he wasn't getting touches, but because he couldn't get on the field. He pretty much was hurt. And then every time he would come back, he would get hurt again. But we finally saw in that last game in Week 18 with Alvin Kamara out, he looked all the part of the guy I expected. Averaged over 5.5 yards per carry on 13 carries against the Falcons defense, which is a good run defense. Looked explosive, looked capable as a pass catcher. And look, I don't think Alvin Kamara is going to be gone next year. I don't think Kendre Miller is taking over this backfield. But it would not surprise me if this is more of a thunder and lightning kind of thing, because Alvin Kamara is really bad running the football, and he's been bad running the football for the last 3 years. Averaged under 4 yards per carry again for the third straight season. In fact, the best game he had this year, he only averaged 4.7 yards per carry. He never even averaged 5 or more yards per carry in a single game this year. He's just so inefficient on the ground. I think Kendre Miller, if he can come into 2024 fully healthy, I think he could be more of the lead back here, get more of the carries with Kamara more in a change of pace role, which, let's be real, is better for him at this point of his career. And Kendre Miller is going to be completely forgotten in drafts because he did nothing as a rookie. So even though it was a lost year for him in 2023, I think we see him bounce back in a big way in 2024.
Now, when we look for hidden gems, a lot of times those come from the bad offenses. This is why these guys are hidden in the first place, overlooked, just ignored. When you think of bad offenses from last year, one of the teams that probably comes to mind is the New York Giants, and it should. Look, we don't really know exactly what the quarterback situation is going to be next year. I do know that the Giants have a top 10 pick, and maybe they do the smart thing and move on from Daniel Jones. But either way, I'm going to look at some receivers in that offense who have potential. Wan'Dale Robinson is the one that comes to mind for me. It's easy to forget he was a second-round pick himself. This guy who was a playmaker at Kentucky, and he was a playmaker at times last year. It's actually kind of impressive. He wound up with 60 catches, 525 yards, despite the fact that he had Daniel Jones, Tommy DeVito, Tyrod Taylor, and still he managed to at least put together some stats. He ended strong with a 5-catch, 85-yard performance in the final week against the Eagles. This guy is talented. Oh, and by the way, he was coming back from ACL surgery, so just impressive that he was ready for the start of the season at all. Look, this guy is a playmaker with the ball in his hands. I'm hoping the Giants do something at quarterback, but even so, I think he's the type of player who can succeed regardless. All right, who else could we unearth that's a hidden gem?
Yeah, Josh Downs showed moments this year, but never really put it together for a full season, but had a decent rookie year, 68 catches, 771 yards, and he had to play pretty much the entire season with Gardner Minshew. Whatever you think of Anthony Richardson as a thrower, he's better than Gardner Minshew, and he's going to open up this offense, and we're going to see a better offense in 2024. Josh Downs was a rookie wide receiver I really liked. I thought he had potential. I liked his game. I liked where he landed in this offense. So I was very encouraged by what I saw from him in year one. I think we see an even better year two. And again, this offense should also be better with a healthy Anthony Richardson. So I know Josh Downs had his moments, but he mostly was not startable in fantasy. I think that changes in year two. I think he goes from not startable to a guy you're going to want in your lineup almost every week.
I'm going to look for another year two receiver, and that's Michael Wilson in Arizona. He's a guy who, just like Downs, showed some flashes, had his moments, but again, for a lot of the season without Kyler Murray. And then when Murray came back, Wilson got hurt, so he missed several weeks. It was hard for the two of them to really gel, but despite that, he showed some flashes of his potential. This guy who is a big play threat, averaging 15 yards per reception, also went up with 585 yards, and had a big game even against the Niners early on in the season. Offseason, together with Kyler Murray, he could definitely develop some more chemistry. Now, a lot of speculation. What if the Cardinals take Marvin Harrison Jr. or get an elite wide receiver somehow? That's fine. Michael Wilson is not going to be the alpha, the number one guy there ever. And he doesn't have to be. You don't have to get a guy who's going to be, this year's Nico Collins, who could be the number one receiver. You could also find a guy who can be a good complementary number two receiver, a guy who can make those big plays downfield. And don't forget, Marquise Brown is a free agent. So even if they do get Harrison or somebody else, they might just be replacing their existing number one. So I like Wilson to really take a step forward in year two. Is there another rookie receiver who could take that leap forward?
Yeah, I don't normally like recommending Patriots wide receivers, but there's reasons to be encouraged by Demario Douglas heading into year two. He had some nice games in 2023 when he was healthy. He was on the field. And again, you talked about it with Wan'Dale Robinson. He had to play with Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi. But we're going to see a different Patriots offense, different Patriots team. First of all, we know Bill Belichick is gone. There's going to be a new coach here, Jared Mayo. Probably will see a new philosophy, but also they have the number 3 pick. You've got to think they're either going to try to trade up and get Caleb Williams, or they're going to go QB with that number 3 pick. And if they do, that should open up this offense, should open up this passing game. Pop was good in year 1. No reason to think he won't get better in year 2. And he doesn't have any competition here. Like, who is he really competing with for targets? Nobody. So don't sleep on Pop in year 2 in 2024. I think he's going to be a late round hidden gem.
Yeah, opportunity definitely matters, and that's why I'm looking at a guy that, I'll just be honest, one of the guys that I'm trading for a lot on the cheap in Dynasty Leagues, I already acquired him in a couple of places, is Trey Palmer in Tampa. Not an elite prospect, not a guy who really made a huge dent, especially in fantasy this season. He had some moments, caught a couple of touchdowns. 2 things that are significant here. Number 1, Mike Evans could be gone. There's a big chance that as a free agent who could get the bag will go somewhere else, try to find a team where he can win another Super Bowl or just secure the bag. Now, if he goes, it doesn't mean Trey Palmer's the guy there. They still have Chris Godwin. And yeah, they'll probably get another receiver through the draft or free agency. But Palmer will see more targets. He'll see more opportunities. And it's interesting that down the stretch, the very end of the season, Trey Palmer had 17 targets over his last 3 games, one up with 136 yards, and he scored one of his 3 touchdowns on the season. Is this a sign that they're preparing him for a bigger role next year? Or maybe just that Baker Mayfield, who could still be the quarterback next year, let's face it, that he's developing more trust in Palmer. Now, Palmer did make some mistakes, had some drops, some fumbles, but this is a rookie who was a later pick, didn't get on the field a lot early in the season, but he did show that he's a part of this offense. So just because he's not going to be the number 1 receiver in this team doesn't mean he could not be a fantasy factor. This is a hidden gem, a guy I think could surprise a lot of people next year. All right, we've talked about a lot of receivers. Is there a tight end who could be intriguing?
Yeah, enough about the year 2 players. Let's talk about a year 3 player, and that is Chig Okonkwo of Tennessee. This is a guy I've liked each of the first 2 years. He's an athletic tight end. He's a pass-catching tight end. He's the kind of guy we want in fantasy. He's just been stuck in Tennessee, but there's reason to think it could be better next year. First of all, he had 77 targets in one of the worst passing offenses in 2023. It's going to be a new offensive philosophy here. Mike Vrabel gone. And there is a chance that they have a new QB. Maybe they'll roll with Will Levis, but they have the number 7 pick. They could use it on a QB, but even if they don't, Will Levis is a capable QB. I think there's reasons we could see a year 3 breakout from Chig Okonkwo, which is typically the year tight ends do break out. Remember, tight ends don't always come in and just dominate like Sam Laporta did in year 1. A lot of times they need 2-3 years to figure it out. This could be the year for Chig Okonkwo. He's going to be one of my favorite kind of late round tight end punts in fantasy football drafts this year.
Oh, believe it or not, I'm also going to go with a Tennessee Titan. And I do think they stick with Will Levis as a quarterback, and I think he could be a hidden gem for fantasy. Now, we know that this is going to be a different team, a different offense, because Vrabel is out. He's been there several years. The reason behind him leaving is, if you get into it, is there's a power struggle behind the scene between him and GM Rand Carthon. Well, Carthon won that battle. And tell you what, Vrabel, he's not the one who picked Levis. Carthon, the GM, did. Levis is his guy. Also, no more Derrick Henry. This is not just going to be a run first, run second, run as much as we can team. They're going to let Levis develop, and they're probably going to have to supplement with a run game. They're going to try to make him succeed. I don't think they spend an early pick on a quarterback. I think they spend it on an offensive lineman to protect Levis. Levis has the arm. I like that he showed a lot of poise. He has athleticism, and despite being a rookie and not that great at a pass offense, he only threw 4 interceptions in 9 games. So the decision making really wasn't that bad. I think a new fresh start here is going to help him. I don't know that I'm going to draft him as my QB1 in fantasy, but I will say I expect him to take a big step forward. Those are some later round picks that you should look at now, some hidden gems. But what about those early picks, the must-have receivers you should be identifying right now? We'll give you our favorites right here.